Navy SEAL Ryan Briggs laughed in the middle of the briefing room and pointed at the woman in the plain green t-shirt, and his voice carried over the rows of men in uniform as he said, "You're telling me she outranks every single one of us?" And the guys on the benches snorted because the woman looked like a new admin clerk who had wandered into the wrong room. Not someone who could pull rank on a room full of special operators. But she just stood there with her hands behind her back, feet shoulder-width apart, calm brown eyes watching Briggs like he was a puzzle she had already solved. And she did not smile, did not flinch, did not look away, which somehow made him push harder, because loud jokes were easier than quiet questions. So he stepped closer and tapped the blank front of his shirt with one finger and said, "You forget your gear. Or is this some kind of fitness class?" And a couple of younger guys looked down, because even they could feel that he had stepped one line too far, and the room, which had been buzzing a moment earlier, began to go still as if the air itself was waiting to see what would happen next. And the woman finally spoke in a low, even tone that carried to the back row. "Take your hand off me, Chief." And the way she said Chief made the ranks sound small, like a toy badge in a box of cereal, and that only made his pride flare hotter. Briggs left his finger where it was for half a second, long enough for everyone to see, then flicked at her shirt like there was dust on it and said, "Or what? You'll file a report." And right then the door opened, and Captain Marcus Reed walked in with a stack of folders under his arm, mid-sentence with a Master Chief beside him. And he froze when he saw who was standing in front of Briggs, folders slipping under his arm as his face drained of color, because the woman in the t-shirt turned her head just enough for him to see her profile. And the captain, who had spent 15 years fighting in more places than he cared to count, went pale in a way nobody had ever seen before, then snapped his heels together so fast the binder on top of the folders slid off and hit the floor, and he raised his hand in a tight salute and said, voice sharp and high, "Mon deck." And the Master Chief beside him jerked like someone had kicked him and followed suit, and every man in that room, including Briggs, scrambled up from the benches, knocking knees and boots as they tried to stand at attention, because they had never seen Captain Reed move that fast for anyone, and Briggs' hand dropped from her shirt like it had been burned. The woman gave the captain a short nod, returned the salute with a crisp motion that did not match her simple clothes at all, then let her arm fall and turned back to the room while the captain stared straight ahead as if waiting for orders, and Briggs' stomach began to sink because he realized she had not even given her name yet, and already the entire chain of command was standing stiff as fence posts in front of her. "At ease," she said, and her voice softened but did not lose its edge. And the room relaxed by habit, though nobody really relaxed inside, because nobody knew who she was, only that the captain feared her more than any of them. She walked slowly to the front, boots quiet on the tile, and picked up the fallen binder without bending her knees much, as if she had done this 1,000 times, then set it on the table and faced the men again. "My name is Ava Lane," she said. "You can call me, or you can call me Commander Lane. For the next 30 days, I own this training detachment." Briggs' jaw worked once, then he forced a half grin and blurted, "Commander of what?" Before he could stop himself, because his pride still hurt from being made to jump like a rookie. Captain Reed made a tiny choking sound, and the Master Chief squeezed his hands into fists, but Ava just studied Briggs for a beat, eyes moving over his trident pin, his chest full of ribbons, his relaxed stance. Then she said, "Of you, Chief Briggs. I am senior to your captain, to your Master Chief, and to every person in this room. If that bothers you, you'll need to decide whether your ego is worth your career." The words dropped into the silence like stones into deep water, and Briggs felt his ears ring because he knew what it meant when someone outranked a captain by that much. It meant she had stars somewhere in her future or behind her. It meant she had clearance he could only dream of. It meant she had seen things that never made the news, and something in his chest that had been big and loud a minute ago went small and cold. Captain Reed finally found his voice and said, "Commander Lane is here on authority from Norfolk and from higher. She is conducting a full evaluation of this unit after the incident last quarter. You will give her complete cooperation, and you will show her the respect due her position." He did not say what the incident was, because they all knew. A trainee named Miller had died in the surf on a night exercise that had gone wrong, lungs full of water and eyes open to the moon. And there had been talk of culture problems and unchecked hazing in the reports, and Briggs had spent hours writing and rewriting his statement to make sure it told enough truth to be safe, but not so much that it could be used against him. Now, standing under the steady gaze of this stranger who outranked all of them, he wondered if he had written enough. Ava Lane stepped closer to the first row of benches, and her eyes landed on a short woman in uniform with second lieutenant bars and a nervous set to her mouth. The young officer sat straight with a notebook on her lap, pen ready, but her fingers trembled. "Name?" Ava asked quietly. "Lieutenant Sarah Kim," the young woman answered, and Ava nodded once. "Good. You'll be my aide during this visit. Sit with me. Take notes on everything, including when people think I'm not watching." The room shifted at those words, and a couple of the men looked away, suddenly aware of every joke they had ever told when a superior's back was turned. Ava walked to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. "Here's what will happen," she said. "You will run your program as if I am not here. I will observe. I will ask questions. I will join some evolutions. At the end, I will make recommendations that will decide who keeps this billet and who finds a desk somewhere cold and windowless. If you try to impress me with drama instead of discipline, you will fail. If you hide things, I will find them." She wrote 3 words on the board in neat block letters: truth, humility, standard. "These are the only things I care about," she said. Briggs crossed his arms and leaned back a little, trying to reclaim some space. "With respect," he said, voice tight but still loud. "Enough for the back row. My men already live by those words. We buried one of our own because he couldn't hack it. That's hard truth. We kept the standard." There was a murmur in the room, some nods, because part of him believed what he was saying, and he clung to it like a shield. Ava's gaze flicked back to him, and for the first time something hot flashed behind her calm eyes. "You buried a kid because nobody pulled him out of the water when he went quiet," she said. "There's a difference." The captain stayed to the floor. The Master Chief's jaw clenched. Briggs felt the air leave his lungs for a second. "You weren't there," he said, sounding smaller than he wanted. "I read every second," she replied. "I've seen the helmet cam feeds. I've heard the yelling. I counted the minutes between when he stopped responding and when anyone checked on him. That is not what keeping the standard looks like." The room went dead silent. No one had told them someone at her level had gone through the footage like that. Briggs swallowed. "So what are you here to do?" he asked. "Tear us apart." Ava capped the marker and set it down. "No," she said. "I'm here to see if this place can be worth the sacrifice you ask of young men and women. If it can, I will fight for it. If it can't, I will burn it down to the foundations and start over." For the next week, the base turned into a storm with Ava Lane at the center. She showed up at morning PT before the first whistle and ran the whole course beside them in that same plain t-shirt, matching pace with men half her age, never dropping, never gasping, just quietly counting off representatives while others grunted and swore. She walked the obstacle course with a clipboard in one hand and a stopwatch in the other, not just timing runs but watching how the instructors talked, who laughed when a trainee stumbled, who stepped in when someone looked close to breaking. She sat in the back of classrooms and asked simple questions that made instructors sweat through their uniforms. Questions like, "What is the lesson here? And why do you do it that way? And who taught you that was acceptable?" At night, she walked the barracks halls, talking to trainees one by one, listening to stories they had never dared voice above a whisper. Briggs watched all of this with a mix of anger and uneasy respect. He told himself she was just another officer passing through, that once she left, things would settle back to the way they had always been. But deep down he felt something shifting, like a tide at night that you do not see until your boots are wet. One evening, after a long day of surf drills where Ava had personally pulled 3 exhausted recruits out of the water and dragged them to the shore while still shouting orders, Briggs found her alone on the pier, staring out over the dark waves. The wind tugged at her short hair, and the lights from the base painted a faint halo around her head. He walked up, footsteps loud on the planks, and said, "You used to be one of us, didn't you?" She did not turn around. "What makes you say that?" "The way you move in the water," he said. "The way you watch for rip currents. People who only read reports don't stand where you stand when they're checking on a line. And you don't flinch when rounds echo from the range. Most desk officers do." She was quiet for a long moment, then said, Once upon a time, I wore the same trident you do. Different command. Different coastline. Why'd you leave? He asked. She breathed out. Someone I loved died because people who should have stopped it did nothing. I didn't trust myself to stay and not become like them. Briggs shifted, feeling sweat on his palms despite the cool air. Is that why you came after us? She finally looked at him, eyes dark in the low light. You want to know the part your captain didn't tell you, she said. The trainee you lost. Miller. Briggs felt a knot tighten in his chest. He nodded once. He was my brother, she said. The words hit him harder than any blow. His mind flashed back to the boy's face, to the wide eyes in the surf, to the way they had joked about him being Lane's kid because Miller shared a last name with some admiral they had heard of in passing. And suddenly those jokes tasted like ash. That's not possible, he whispered. He was from Oklahoma. We had different fathers, she said. But he called me every week while he trained. He believed in this place because I told him it could make him strong and good. He died on your watch. Briggs swayed as if the pier had moved. All the careful lines he had drawn in his head about whose fault it was began to blur. Then why aren't we already shut down? He asked hoarsely. Why give us a chance at all? Ava looked back at the dark water. Because if I close this place without knowing if it can change, there will be nowhere else to send the next kid like him who wants to serve but doesn't know who to trust. I need to see if the men who train them can learn. If they can't, I will make sure no one else walks through these gates. The next day, she staged a night evolution that none of them expected. The trainees were told it was a normal navigation exercise, but Ava met with the instructors beforehand and laid out a plan that turned the routine drill into a hard mirror for everything wrong with the unit. The trainees would move through a dark course with blank rounds, while hidden evaluators triggered stress events, smoke, fake casualties, sudden changes in orders. Instructors were supposed to guide, not haze, and Ava would watch from multiple points with live feed cameras patched to a control room. Briggs thought it sounded like overkill. You can't simulate real pressure, he told her in the prep room. You either have it or you don't. She gave him a level look. I'm not testing them, she said. I'm testing you. That night, the field shimmered under low red lights as the teams moved out. Briggs shadowed his crew from 5 meters back. As instructed, watching how they handled the map, how they checked on one another. At first, everything went smoothly. The trainees called out obstacles, kept their spacing, followed the markers. Then the first smoke grenade went off near the tree line, and a fake casualty call came over the radio from another team. Instead of keeping his distance and letting his junior instructor take the lead, Briggs' old habits jumped out. He pushed past the line, barking orders, grabbing a trainee by the vest and shoving him toward the smoke. Move faster. You want to be here or not? He yelled, even though Ava had told them not to interfere like that. Through the haze, he saw a shape on the ground, a mannequin rigged with a speaker that played faint groans, and the trainees hesitated, unsure if this was a trick or a test of care. Leave him, Briggs snapped. Objective first. One of the younger men, a quiet recruit named Lopez, shook his head. We can't just leave him, Chief, he said. He's one of ours. Briggs grabbed his shoulder. You do what I say, he growled. And for a heartbeat, Lopez's eyes looked just like Miller's had, right before the boy turned back into the waves that night instead of toward the shore. The memory sliced through Briggs' chest, and his grip faltered, just a little. In that instant, a flare snapped overhead, bathing the field in harsh white light, and Ava's voice came through every headset at once. All units, freeze, she ordered. Drop to a knee where you are. The sudden stillness felt like being caught in a spotlight on stage. A moment later, she strode out of the smoke in full kit, helmet chin-strapped, vest clipped tight, rifle slung across her chest, moving like she had never left the teams. She walked straight to Briggs and Lopez, stopped a foot away, and looked down at the mannequin on the ground. Who gave the order to abandon a teammate? She asked quietly. Briggs felt every eye on him. His throat whacked. I did, he said. Why? We had to reach the objective, he said. We teach them to push past distractions. Ava squatted beside the dummy and tapped the fake blood on its chest. This is not a distraction, she said. This is the point. Anyone can run to a flag when the path is clear. I need to know if you will stop when it costs you time, comfort, approval. You failed that choice once already when it was real. I will not let you teach that failure to a new generation. Her words hit harder than the flay's glare. Briggs felt sweat run down his spine even though the night was cool. You put this here just for me, he said, hearing how small it sounded. I put this here for them, she answered, tipping her head toward the trainees. You just showed them who you are when you think nobody above you is watching. She turned to Lopez. What would you have done if I hadn't called freeze? I would have stayed with him, Lopez said, voice shaking. Even if the chief ordered you to move on, she asked. He swallowed. Yes. She nodded once. Remember that, she said. Your career might depend on it someday. She straightened and motioned toward the control tower. Exercise suspended. All instructors, report to the briefing room. Trainees, secure gear and stand by. In the harsh fluorescent light of the briefing room, the mood turned heavy. Ava stood at the front, arms folded, watching the line of instructors like a judge. Captain Reed sat to the side, eyes shadowed. What you did out there tonight was not an error in tactics, Ava said, looking right at Briggs. It was a window into your heart. You would rather be seen as tough than be truly responsible. Briggs opened his mouth to argue, but she lifted a hand. Save it. I read your entire record. I know where you came from, the missions you led. That's part of why I chose this detachment for my review. Chose? Briggs echoed. I thought we were just assigned to you. No, she said. I requested you. Do you remember a village 12 years ago, inland from the coast in a place that never made the news? Night insertion, wrong intel, a family caught in the crossfire. Something like panic flickered in his eyes. Very few people knew about that operation. We followed orders, he said. We did what we were told. You left before the dust settled, she said. I stayed as part of a follow-up team. I saw the people trying to rebuild from the mess you left. I saw the boy with the broken arm who still saluted the flag because he believed the men who did this would one day come back different. Miller was that boy's cousin. A low murmur rippled through the room. Captain Reed shifted, guilt carving deeper lines into his face. You can't pin that on me, Briggs said weakly. We were all there. Ava's gaze slid to the captain. Some of us lied in the debrief, she said. Reed flinched as if struck. I believed it was necessary, he said. We had to protect the program. At the cost of the truth, she replied. At the cost of my brother's trust. At the cost of every recruit who walks in here thinking this place will make them better men instead of harder cowards. The word hung in the air like a slap. For a moment, it looked like Reed might explode, but instead he sagged. What are you going to do? He asked quietly. Write the report that ends us. Ava looked over the line of instructors, over Briggs' tight jaw and the fear in their eyes, over Kim clutching her notebook at the back. I don't decide that tonight, she said. Tomorrow, there's a joint exercise with the Marines at the far range. Live ammo, live air support, real risk. I will see who you are when the rounds are not blanks. After that, I will decide who should still be here. The next day dawned clear and sharp, the kind of day that made everything look more real. The joint exercise was supposed to be a complex attack and defense scenario with Marines playing the opposing force, SEAL trainees moving through a mock village, and helicopters providing cover. Ava rode in the lead truck, radio pressed to her ear, helmet shadowing her eyes. Briggs stood at the back beside his team, checking gear, trying to push down the fear that had been gnawing at him since the night before. He kept seeing Miller's face, Lopez's defiant eyes, Ava's calm anger. Halfway to the range, the radio crackled with unexpected chatter. All units. This is Tower, a tense voice said. We've got a real situation. Civilian helicopter went down on the ridgeline near your AO. Unknown number of wounded. Local responders are 30 minutes out. You're 10 minutes away. Command requesting available units divert to assist. Ava's eyes met Captain Reed's across the truck. For a second, everything hung. This was supposed to be controlled. Safe. Now real lives were at stake. We can call it in. Let the Marines handle it, Reed said, voice low. We can't risk trainees in a live emergency. Ava shook her head once. You wanted to prove this place deserves to exist, she said. This is how. Real service, not staged. We will adjust. She grabbed the radio. Power. This is Commander Lane. We are diverting. Send coordinates and any intel you have. I will assume responsibility for this unit. She looked back at the trainees. Listen up, she shouted over the engine noise. This is no longer practice. A helicopter is down. People may be bleeding out on that ridge. You will follow my orders exactly. Anyone who cannot handle that can stay in the truck when we arrive and live with that choice. No one sat down. Even Briggs straightened. The trucks bounced up the dirt road, dust clouds billowing. As they neared the ridge, they saw a thin column of smoke curling into the sky. The broken shape of the helicopter lay tilted on its side against the rocks, one rotor blade bent like a snapped wing. Flames licked at the fuselage. The air smelled of burning fuel and metal. Ava jumped out before the vehicle stopped moving, waving people into position. Perimeter there and there, she shouted, pointing to the rocks. Fire team with me. Medics forward. Briggs, you're with me. Lopez, you're with him. Briggs blinked. She was trusting him that closely, even now. He swallowed and ran. They reached the wreckage as a weak shout came from inside. Help! Someone's trapped under the seat. The cockpit glass was cracked but not completely shattered. A pilot was half hanging out, blood on his forehead, trying to pull at something inside. Ava climbed onto the side of the wreck like it was just another obstacle, barking for foam extinguishers to hit the flames. Briggs and Lopez moved to the rear, yanking open crumpled doors. They found a young woman pinned beneath a twisted seat, her leg caught under a bracket, eyes wide with pain. Please, she gasped. I can't move. Heat pressed against them, making every breath a fight. Flames were creeping closer to the exposed fuel line. We don't have time to cut her free, Lopez shouted, coughing. We'll all go up if that line blows. Briggs' mind raced. The old him would have measured odds and chosen the safer path, convincing himself it was the smart call. Miller's face flashed in his memory again. The mannequin on the ground. Ava's words about who you are when it costs you. He planted his feet. You get the others clear, he told Lopez. I'll stay with her. Lopez stared. Chief, that's an order, Briggs snapped, though his voice shook. Tell Commander Lane I'm buying her a minute. Lopez hesitated, then nodded and scrambled back, hauling another injured passenger with him. Briggs leaned over the trapped woman, trying to shield her with his body. What's your name? He asked, voice rough. Kayla, she whispered. I'm scared. Me too, he said honestly. But we're not leaving you. The heat grew worse, blistering his exposed skin. He heard the crackle of growing fire and the shouts of men outside. Then Ava's face appeared in the doorway, eyes fierce. Chief, move, she shouted. We're dragging her together. You said we had to leave no one, he yelled back. I'm staying. I said we don't abandon people, she returned. That includes you. Grab the seat. Together they braced their shoulders against the twisted metal. Ava's muscles bunched, sweat pouring down her temple. On three, she grunted. 1, 2, 3. They heaved. Pain shot through Briggs' back, and the seat shifted an inch. The woman screamed. Flames roared louder, licking closer. Again, Ava coughed. 1, 2, 3. They pulled with everything they had. The bracket snapped. The woman slid free with a cry. Briggs scooped her up, legs trembling, and stumbled toward the exit with Ava covering his back. They were 10 feet from the open air when the fuel line ignited, sending a fireball racing along the side of the fuselage. Ava shoved Briggs hard, throwing herself sideways. The blast knocked them both to the ground, showering them with burning debris. For a heartbeat, there was only roar and heat and white light. Then sound and sight came rushing back. Briggs found himself sprawled on the dirt. Kayla clutched against his chest, ears ringing. Ava lay a few feet away, unmoving, one side of her shirt charred. Commander, he shouted, trying to stand, but his legs gave out. Lopez and 2 others rushed in, dragging them both to safety as smoke billowed behind them. Medics swarmed. Someone pressed a bandage against Briggs' burned shoulder. Another worked on Ava, checking her pulse, placing an oxygen mask over her face. Captain Reed appeared, face etched with panic. "Is she breathing?" he demanded. "Barely," a medic answered. "But yes, she took the worst of the blast." Briggs felt something inside him crack and splinter. This woman, whose brother he had failed, had just thrown herself between him and a fireball. Hours later, after the fire was out and the wounded were airlifted away, the sun dipped low over the ridge. Ava lay in the medical tent, bandaged and pale but awake. Briggs sat by her cot, one arm wrapped in gauze, staring at his boots. "You disobeyed me," she rasped through the mask, eyes half open. He looked up, shame and stubborn pride fighting in his face. "I thought you'd send me away from her," he said. "I couldn't let that happen again." A faint smile tugged at her mouth. "You finally chose the harder right," she murmured. "Took long enough." "Why did you push me so hard?" he asked. "Because men listen to you," she said. "However you act, they copy. I needed you to become someone worth copying before I decide what to do with this place." Captain Reed stepped into the tent then, hat in his hands, lines of fatigue deep around his eyes. "Commander Lane," he said quietly, "I've sent my resignation to the Admiralty. I lied in that debrief years ago. I let my fear of losing my command guide me. You were right. I can't lead these men anymore." Ava studied him for a long moment. "You're not getting out that easy," she said. He blinked. "You will stay," she said. "You will stand in front of every trainee on this base and tell them exactly what you did. You will tell them fear drove you to bend the truth. You will tell them that rank without integrity is empty cloth. Then, and only then, if they still trust you, you will earn back the right to wear that trident on your chest. If they don't, you will accept that and move on." Reed swallowed hard. "That will destroy whatever respect I have left," he said. "No," she replied. "It will be the first honest respect you have ever had." 2 weeks later, the entire detachment gathered in the main hangar. Banners hung from the rafters. Rows of chairs filled the floor, trainees in the front, instructors behind them. At the front, a simple wooden podium stood, a microphone attached. A large photo of Miller in uniform sat on an easel to one side, his young face smiling out over the crowd. Ava, now mostly healed, stood quietly off to the left, arms folded. Next to her, Lopez shifted nervously. Briggs stood in the instructor row, bandaged but upright. Captain Reed walked to the podium, movements slow, eyes scanning the room. He took a deep breath and began to speak. He told them about the mission years ago, about the report he had twisted to protect careers. He told them about the way he had let jokes slide that cut at the dignity of the weak. He told them how he had watched the footage of Miller's last night and tried to convince himself there was nothing he could have done differently. His voice cracked more than once, but he did not stop. When he finished, he stepped back from the MIC and said, "I understand if you want me gone. After this, you decide. This command belongs to you as much as to any flag." The hangar was silent. Ava looked out over the rows of faces, waiting. Then Lopez stood up. "Sir," he called, voice clear. "I want a CEO who will tell the truth, even when it hurts. I say you stay and prove it every day." A few heads turned toward him. Then another trainee stood. "Same here," she said. "We all screw up. At least you owned it." Slowly, row by row, more trainees rose to their feet. Not all of them, but enough. Reed's eyes shone. He bowed his head. Ava watched, something like relief and sadness mixed on her face. After the assembly, as people filed out, Briggs walked up to her. "So," he said quietly, "what happens now? You're going to write that report and crush us." She looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head. "I'm going to recommend this place stay open," she said. "With changes. Real ones. You will build a memorial to every trainee who died here. You will read their names before every new class. You will change the way you run your evolutions. And you, Ryan Briggs, will be the one to teach the block on ethics and courage." He stared. "Me? You know what happens when you choose pride," she said. "And you know what it feels like to finally choose differently. Those are lessons you can speak about with more weight than any manual." He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "What about you?" he asked. Will we ever see you again? A hint of a smile touched her lips. I'll be watching, she said. Not always from the front of the room. Sometimes from the back. Sometimes from much higher up than you think. Months passed. The base changed. There were still hard days, still broken bones and bruised egos, still cold nights in the surf and long ruck marches, but the laughter that echoed across the sand was different now, less cruel, more bonded. Instructors stepped in when lines were crossed. Trainees were pushed to their limits, but not past them without purpose. The memorial wall went up near the gate, Miller's name carved along with others. A simple plaque beneath that read, "Strength without honor is nothing." Briggs taught the new ethics block like his life depended on it. He told stories he had never shared before, about fear and bragging and the quiet shame of seeing your own weakness on a screen. He watched the faces of young men and women as they listened, and he prayed they would make better choices faster than he had. One day, as a new class lined up on the grinder, a car pulled up near the fence. A woman in civilian clothes stepped out, wearing sunglasses and a simple jacket. She walked to the memorial wall, stood there for a long moment, then laid a small folded flag at its base. Briggs, standing with his instructors, recognized the tilt of her head, the steady way she walked. "Permission to approach," he called from a distance, half teasing. Ava turned, a faint smile on her face. "You don't need permission," she said. "You outrank most people here in the ways that matter now." He shook his head. "No," he said. "You still outrank every single one of us." She glanced past him at the trainees sweating under the morning sun, at Captain Reed calling cadence beside them, at Lopez running with the pack, and her eyes softened. "Not where it counts," she said quietly. "Out here, the ones who carry the next generation forward hold the real weight." She looked back at Miller's name, reached out, and brushed her fingers over the carved letters. "But I'm proud of what you've done with it." The wind off the ocean carried the sound of shouting and boots hitting pavement. For a moment, everything seemed to line up, the past and the present, the pain and the hard-won healing, the woman who had once been just a face in a t-shirt in a briefing room, and the men who had once laughed at her and now stood taller because of her. Ava Lane turned to go, her steps steady, her rank hidden under plain cloth once more, but the respect that followed her out of the gate was deeper than any stripe or star. And that, in the end, was what really made the captain go pale the first day he saw her and realized that some people would always stand on a higher ground than any of them, no matter what they wore.